So, Seamus, Cannibal Halfling, whoever the hell you are, what is exactly going on here? What is this pulp thing that you keep talking about in all these videos? How do you play it? What are the rules? Good question. So maybe you're dropping in after watching the little preview of the print version of Sentia Besieged from Within and Without. Maybe you're dropping in elsewhere. Either way, welcome aboard. This is Pulp 101, a little bit of a primer. So how actually do you play Pulp the RPG? Okay, so the first step, really, the easiest step I find in explaining to people how to play this game is to look at a character sheet. So here's a character sheet. It's very complex. There's a lot of math and a lot of words and So I mean, Pulp the RPG, it's supposed to kind of invoke the same feel as those old pulp comics like 20s, 30s, and 40s. Which didn't worry too much about rules. They cared more about the narrative and the story and the action and the high risks and the high rewards and the ups and the downs. And that's how the game is designed. Now, looking at our dear friend Wade here, who is in fact a pre-made character from Sentia Besieged, from Within and Without. Up top, you have attributes. Okay, the C stands for charm, which is kind of your force of personality, your charisma. Grit is the G. Grit is your mental fortitude, your ability to grit your teeth and stand up through a situation, whether it's pain or fear or surprise, stuff like that. Smarts is pretty easy. It's your intelligence. Vigor is your strength and your vitality. And luck is that special something that sets you aside from the mooks and the goons of the world. Every player character has a luck stat because all the other attributes, they can be used directly to make a roll, or they can be targeted. Luck, that's not the case. Luck, you can spend a luck point to add a +1 to a roll, or you can spend 2 luck points to re-roll a roll after you've seen the results, which can be a pretty big game changer. Now, you will note that these numbers for Wade Shi, they add up to 11. When you're making your own pulp character, you always have 1 point in luck. You start with it. You get it for free. After that, you have 10 points to spend as you wish across all your attributes to a maximum of 5 in any given one. Now, Wade here is pretty balanced. He's got a 1 in charm. He's not very charismatic, unfortunately for him, but he's decently smart, and he's pretty vigorous, and he's a gritty character, and he's got a little bit of extra luck to help him out. So after you've got your attributes, you have your traits. We have edge, tagline, bond, and assets. And what you're going to do for every single role is first thing you're going to do is you're going to state your intent. Okay? The GM presents a situation to you, the player. It comes around to your turn, and he asks you, what are you going to do? What is your intent? Now, let's say that Wade here, the situation he's presented with is a giant honking ogre that's running at him. Okay, so hold that thought. The first trait he's got right there is his edge. Daggers solve everything. Sounds like a pretty good edge. Now, what the edge is the thing that a character is best at. It's their bread and butter. It's their special something that lets them not just survive an adventuring lifestyle, but to thrive in it. So, since it's your bread and butter, your best thing, it's always positive, and it gives a +3 bonus to a roll. So, there's an ogre. Wade's intent is to leap up upon the ogre and ram a dagger into its eyeball. Pretty good way to deal with an ogre. Alright, he stated his intent. Now, how does he build his bonus? Well, you're going to choose 1 attribute and 1 trait. Not multiple traits, not multiple attributes, not a combination of multiples, 1 of each. That's all you can do. So for this case, Wade would probably go, it seems like a physical action, says the player to the GM. So I'm going to go with Vigor, which is 3. And since it involves daggers, I think that daggers solve everything, including ogres. So I can use my edge here, right? Yes, says the GM. So that's another +3. So you take that bonus that you have now built, you roll a single d6, and add it up. The ogre, having been targeted, gets to state his own intent, which is probably pick Wade up and, be Hulk to his Loki. Both sides build their pools, roll. Whoever gets the higher roll, their intent carries out. And the difference being, if this is a combat situation, which in the Wade Ogre version example it is, the difference is how much damage is done. In this case, again, to Vigor. Although, again, Charm, Grit, and Smarts can all be targeted themselves. Now, the way you can be defeated is if any of your attributes, because that's where all the damage goes, is reduced to -5. You have a luck stat, so you can go all the way down to -5. If you didn't have a luck stat, you'd be out at 0. Not great. So that luck stat is important. So let's say Wade makes his roll, and he gets a total of 10, and the ogre gets a total of 12. That's a difference of 2. He takes 2 vigor damage, and his vigor goes down to 1. As you can tell, taking damage to your attributes can get pretty bad pretty fast. So we've addressed the attributes. We've addressed the first trait, the edge, which is the best trait you want. Your players are always going to be looking a way to justify how to use it. And that's basically how you make a roll. You have to justify. It has to make sense for the narrative. So the second attribute there is tagline. Now the tagline basically describes who the character is. If this was a Pulp movie, and each character had their own poster at the movie theater, this is probably, well, the tagline that would be splashed on the bottom. So Wade here is an old hand. Now the thing about tagline is, it's not a +3, because it's not always positive. It's a +1 if you use it in a positive manner. It's a -1 if it's in a negative manner. So maybe Wade is an old hand and he's stuck in his ways, and he decides to take a -1 to his roll, whatever it might be. Why would you want to take a -1 to your roll? Because if you use your tagline negatively and take a -1 to the roll, you get a luck point. That is the only way to get an attribute back of any kind in the middle of an encounter. And as I said, luck can be a pretty big deal, especially if you're like our friend Wade here and you have 2, which means you have the ability to re-roll rolls. Pretty big deal. After the tagline, you have your bond. Now Wade here, his bond is that he's Kieran's mentor. Kieran being another one of the pre-made player characters from Sentia. Now that's a very specific type of bond, but a bond is basically, alright, the tagline has described who the character is. The bond is going to describe how they're tied to the world around them. So, Wade's is Kieran's mentor. Another player character's bond might be something like Paladin of Jast, God of Cities, or bond of Blue-Eyed Wizard, Water Mages Guild, that sort of thing. That is like the tagline in that it's always plus or minus 1. And a reminder, you can only use one of these traits, so you can't use your edge and your bond or tagline. You can't take +3 for your edge and a -1 and then get a luck point. No, 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 no. You have to pick one. Finally, you have your assets, which are your gear. And all of those come in at +1. They are something of an emergency trait. If you can't find a legitimate reason to use your edge, your tagline, your bond, hopefully you can find something to use your asset with. Now, I should point out, you're always going to be hunting for your edge. Unless you're really desperate for luck points. Because you always want that +3. You always want positive. However, you shouldn't dismiss the tagline, the bond, and the assets just because you want to be using your edge. It's a narrative game. Keep that in mind. So even when you're always using your edge, your tagline, your bond, and your assets should still inform how you play the character or how the narrative of the edge being used actually works. That's character sheet. We're it. That's it. It's done. That's all you need, right? You need a basic understanding of how the game plays. So I've already discussed, you build your bonus. You take one, no funny business, one attribute and one trait, add them together, and then make your roll. It's easier to see like that. Using a d6. Now, I said earlier, high risk, high reward. When you make your roll, if you beat your opponent by 6, or you get a 6, by the way, custom Beer Star Games dice, they are available in the store. They are very shiny. So if you beat your opponent by 6 or you roll a 6, you have not just succeeded, you've got an outstanding success. So you succeed, and then the GM describes something really cool that happens. If you have a result of 2 or less, which is awful, or if you roll a 1, even if you succeed, you still get a complication. And that's up to the GM. Something goes wrong. So let's say Wade was fighting that ogre on a rope bridge, and he got a 1 on his roll, but the ogre still didn't do really great on his own roll, and Wade still beat him. So Wade stabs the ogre in the eye, but the rope bridge snaps under the weight of the ogre. That would be an example of what a complication might be. So 1 in 3 rolls, something interesting is going to happen. You're either going to get an outstanding success, or you're going to get a complication. High risk, high reward. Big ups, big downs. The final little bit of rule that I would like to address is how initiative works. So the way the game is played is you keep going until you have to roll. It's a narrative game. You don't need to keep rolling dice all the time if you're just saying, okay, I'm going to go over here and look at this thing. Once someone makes a roll, they have gone first in an initiative. Once their turn is done, they choose who goes next. So party member 1 rolls, finishes. He now has a choice between bad guy 1, 2, and 3 or party member 2, 3, and 4. The last person who goes in initiative order chooses who goes first. And the person who goes last is also an option. So player 1 chooses player 2, who chooses player 3, who chooses player 4. Bad guys 1 through 3 then go. And bad guy number 3 chooses bad guy number 3 to start the next round of initiative. So there's a little bit of tactical thinking as to who you're going to choose to go next. You have to be a little bit clever about it. So that is a very, very basic rundown of how to play Pulp the RPG, what your character sheet looks like, how you make your rolls, how the game functions. So I hope that answered some questions for you guys. Again, the Pulp the Core RPG rules are available on DriveThruRPG at Pay What You Want. They're very small, very simple. They come in a couple of versions. A basic PDF version. They also come in a pocket mod version, so you can print it out and fold it up and make a nice, neat little booklet about yay big. It's really cool. So yeah, I hope that was very helpful and enlightening. Until next time, I'm not entirely sure what we'll be talking about next time, actually, but we'll see. Take care, guys.